welcome to the Roundhouse. Today we have Josh Hejka, a pitcher for the Brooklyn Cyclones and our webmaster here at ball9.com. We have Kevin Kernan, AMBS if you will, sports writer extraordinaire. And we have, once again, Dan Tiant, our returning guest, player representative. So I think I want to get into a little bit really quickly about what's going on now. The deal that's in place, perhaps, and is going to be voted on later today. Josh, I'll start with you because you were just kind of talking about it.
So I mean, as far as I know, the players turned down the last agreement yesterday, and the owners imposed a 60-game season, and players get to vote on that today. I don't think there's any coronavirus protections or anything like that. I know it's a little bit of a complex situation, and obviously I'm not in the Players Association, so I don't fully understand all the implications. But for us minor leaguers, it's not looking good in terms of whether we're going to have a season. I really don't think we will. But I'm hoping that the major leaguers play, and I know millions of people are hoping the major leaguers play, and I guess we'll see later today whether they decide.
Let's hope so. Kevin, what do you think?
Well, first I wanted to ask Josh, as a minor leaguer and you work all year for this and you see major leaguers coming back, it's obviously disappointing, but explain the mindset that you're in now as a professional athlete.
Yeah, it's really tough because, you know, I didn't even get a chance to pitch to batters at spring training before it was canceled this year. So I still haven't had a chance to even show what I've been working on this past off season. And now it's looking like I'm going to have another full off season to work on stuff. But especially with minor league contraction going on, you know, it's really tough because guys are going to have to separate themselves in order to guarantee their spot within a franchise. And it's just very tough because, like I said, stuff I've been working on all off season, you know, I still haven't even had a chance to show that yet. And especially with 40 minor league teams being cut next year, you know, I want to be able to show what I've been working towards and stuff. But unfortunately right now it's looking like I won't have an opportunity to do that.
Well, and that's got to be the difficult part because unfortunately I think and this is one of my things going on with baseball now, but you know, the high draft picks get pushed up no matter what. And the guys who may prove themselves, they need to show, and they need to show quickly. If you don't have that opportunity, this is why I believe it's you know, I wouldn't be shocked if there's a new league that comes around pretty soon where guys get a second chance somewhere.
I could definitely see independent leagues expanding. I mean, 1,000 minor leaguers were cut just last month. Maybe not even last month, maybe a few weeks ago. And, you know, there's so many people out there. There's definitely a market for it. There's so many people out there who want to keep playing. And these are guys who, like I said, didn't even get a chance to show anything this offseason. This spring training, just due to the reality of coronavirus and everything that's been happening. But these aren't guys whose careers ended because, you know, they weren't good enough. It's because of the circumstances. So I can understand why that's frustrating for a lot of guys.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and Dan, I mean, as a representative, what do you tell your players with a situation like this? And I mean, you know, I mean, the draft was 5 rounds this year. So I'm sure you have a lot of guys, I mean, that are looking for a place to play. And like what Kevin alluded to, you know, possibly independent ball or something like that. I mean, what do you tell your guys, you know, to kind of keep morale up at this point?
Well, you know, it's really hard because, you know, like Josh was saying, you know, you're preparing for this all year long, and to come to an abrupt stop, you know, and not being able to pitch or prove yourself. I mean, these guys are here for a short time, so the time is limited. You got players coming in every year, and for it to come like this at a stop, and now you replenishing with new kids in the draft, you really got to come back ready to perform when the season starts again. So, you know, what we try to tell our guys is, look, just stay in shape, keep active, keep working out, and just be ready when the call comes. It's hard because it's hard for them to stay prepared mentally and physically and not knowing if a season is going to happen. You know, I was working out with 3 of the guys here this week, and that's the one thing that they're talking about. It's, you know, we're training. What are we training for if they can't even give us a straight answer if there's going to be a season or not? So it's I think the mental aspect of it is more important at this point, to get these guys to stay focused, keep working out, and just be ready when season starts for them. I deal with a lot of Latin players, so they're getting ready for winter ball. That's still up in the air, but I'm getting calls from teams in Latin America and Australia, and they're hoping to have a season, and they're preparing for a season. So that might be helpful for a lot of the guys, to stay ready, stay focused, and stay in shape for that when winter season comes, so they're ready to play and come back stronger for next season.
Absolutely. I mean, Josh, is that something you would consider, like possibly winter ball or something like that, just to kind of stay in shape and to actually work on, and pitch to batters, with everything that you've been working on all season, all
Sure. Yeah. So we've had a lot of talks with our pitching coordinator with the New York Mets, and they've mentioned the possibility of doing an extended fall league or possibly winter leagues. And at this point, I'm 23 years old. I'm not trying to have an entire year where I don't play baseball. So, I'll do anything that they ask of me. I'll go wherever, any country, any city, wherever they want, if it allows me to play baseball. Because like I said, there's only so many years in your life where you can play baseball at a high level, and I'm basically losing one of those years right now. And that's not a great feeling. And I would love to play wherever, if the opportunity presented itself.
Excellent. Really quickly, now that there is kind of a little deal on the table that's going to be voted on today, before our special guest arrives, I just wanted to ask you guys if you think there going to be a season? Do you think that this is just lip service where, okay, they're going to agree to something, but, then there's no coronavirus contingency plan. There's no, do you really think that the season is going to happen? We'll go around. Dan, I'll start with you.
You know what? Every day you hear something new. I really don't know if I want to answer this. I'll tell you what, I'll believe it when I see it. Right. I really hope there is a season. I really do. And I think they dropped the ball from the very beginning. There should have been a season a month ago. Yeah. They needed to come together, work together, and forget about the other issues for now and focus on what the game of baseball means, not only to them, but to this country, to the fans. And that's the part that's really upsetting to me. It's, I understand the negotiations and everything that's going on with the CBA and the discussions they're doing, but I think at one point or another, you have to think of the big picture, and not the now, but what the big picture is and what this could have meant for everybody if baseball started a month and a half ago. So, I keep hearing all the stories, all the leaked information. And for me personally, once I see the guys reporting July 1st, ready to play, I might have a different answer. Right. At this point, I don't know.
That's fair. Kevin?
And no doubt in my mind they're going to play. There's just too much money at stake for the owners. They'll work around things. And like Dan said, and I wrote about it today in Ball 9, but yesterday and today it's posted, but they dropped the ball. They just didn't drop the ball, and I was wrong. I said they were tone deaf. They're not really tone deaf. They don't care, and that's what's worse than tone deaf. It's okay to be tone deaf because that gives you an excuse. But the more I thought about it, the more people I talked to today as well, and I just think Major League Baseball and the players, they didn't think of anyone else. They both got selfish. They both got greedy. And really, I think it's, I'm not a huge Trevor Bauer fan, but I have to agree. He basically threw that baseball over the fence today or yesterday with the tweets about, how baseball blew it. He's 100% right. Yeah. You got to start looking beyond yourself. And I've made that point on a couple podcasts last few days. And for baseball not to do that, this is just one of the worst PR disasters in the history of the game. This is, to me, what's happened this year is worse than the Black Sox, worse than the steroid era. And we're in, and Josh mentioned it, as a player, those guys, they're out there. We're in the COVID era. They should have thought about, like Dan said, they should have settled this a month and a half ago so they had all the COVID situation laid out. This is exactly what we're doing. This is how you can be as safe as you can be. And the only thing I will say, I'm in Florida, and I know that it's been more of a hot spot, but I still say make sure you look at hospitalizations and, obviously deaths. So I know I heard from someone I respect today, I won't mention the team, but one of the teams that had players, X amount of players and club officials, every one of those was asymptomatic except for one player who had a runny nose. And he had a little bit of a fever, and he was the one who was tested, and then they moved forward and tested the others and found that. So the good news is, people are not, at least at this point, not getting deathly sick. And everything I've read from viruses, I'm no expert, but they do weaken over time, and I'm hoping and praying that's the situation.
Absolutely. Josh, what do you think about all this?
I'm going to offer a slightly different perspective. Obviously, I'm not a member of the Players Association. I have no knowledge of what went on there. I have no knowledge from anybody what went on there, just what you guys have probably heard through the media and stuff like that. I do agree that it's a travesty that we're not playing baseball right now. But in my personal opinion, I believe it lies completely on the owners and not on the players for a few reasons. One is that whenever Major League Baseball has record revenues, record profits, players get no share of that. They eventually get shares of that through higher salaries and stuff like that. But it's completely unfair of the owners to, what's the old phrase, privatize the gains and socialize the losses. The entire reason owners are here in the first place is to take the risk for situations like this. The average MLB franchise has gained over $1 billion in value over the last 6 years. Over $1 billion in value. And the owners were bickering over an extra $33 million per owner for one season. Like, that's ridiculous to me. Yeah. And the other thing is that if you look at the way the attendance after the 1994 strike, attendance went way down, and it took 12 years to get back to pre-strike levels. A situation like this is going to cost the owners more money than it would have just to give the players what they wanted. You would think the owners and the players have a business, incentive to work together and, make a lot of money together in the future. But the players only have a very short window to make as much money as they possibly can. They're only in their physical prime for so long. The owners own this appreciating asset that increases billions of dollars every decade. In my opinion, the owners should have been the ones to, take the lumps this time, eat the loss, and, like I said, they'll make it up tenfold in the next few years.
That's understandable. Well, I do want to let you guys know we have a little treat for you guys. We have something else that's going to pick out of a hat, I believe, and say yes or no. I would like to introduce you guys to our very special guest today. This is Stacy Gunderson, and she has a little friend of ours named Marley here.
Hey, Marley. Hey.
Hi,
Chris.
Hi, Marley. Hi, guys.
Hi.
His name isn't Rob, is it? Not Rob.
Is that Rob Manfred? So, Marley, we wanted to ask you, is there going to be a season this year? Can you let us know yes or no?
Marley has prepared a couple of bags. One's a yes and one's a no.
Okay.
And he's going to pick. Which one you want, Marley? Go ahead.
Come on, Marley.
Do you have one?
Let us know.
I think he feels the pressure of deciding.
We all do.
Which one? Okay, Mama. Here. Ready? Mix them all up. Okay.
Marley doesn't want to pick.
She's confused like me.
I know. We're all confused about what's going on here.
Marley's on the fence.
I like the little baseball bags. Those are great.
Well, thank you. Here, Mama. Come on. Ready? There's goodies. Which one? Just pick one, Marley. Oh my God! How about Haley? Bring Haley in, would ya? We're gonna
you
bring
know
in
what?
Marley's. We're gonna bring in Marley's girlfriend and see if she'll help him
even
out.
better.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're gonna see if Marley's girlfriend will come and choose a bag. Well, let's bring him over here to Haley. Okay. Here, you give her those. Okay, you guys. So this is Haley, Marley's
Haley.
girlfriend, and we'll see what she says. Oh, she picked that one.
Oh, what do we
All right.
got?
Oh.
Let's see what she picked. She's not gonna share. Okay, let's see what it is. The ball says. I'm nervous. Yes!
Wow.
All right.
Very good.
We're going to have a season, ladies and gentlemen. All right.
Somebody finally agreed
Just
to
to
it.
show you that it wasn't rigged. Just to show you that it was not rigged. Yeah, we didn't have 2 yeses, just so you know. Okay, well, it's got there we go. Got the treats in there. There we go. And there's the other one was the no. So.
All right.
not
All
rigged.
right. All right. That's way to go, guys. That's awesome.
Thanks so much,
That is
Chris. Have
awesome.
a great
Thank
day.
you. And I want to say thank you and everybody that's watching and listening. Check out Animal Tracks. They're here in California. Great organization. And they can use some support right about now. And thank you, guys. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys. So we're probably the only baseball podcast today that has monkeys on it. Unless Rob Manfred goes on one. But anyway, so apparently we're going to have a season. I don't know how to transition out of that. There were friggin' monkeys.
I think that summed up the last few weeks of negotiations pretty well.
I think so, too.
Absolutely.
Well
said.
Yeah, that's actually perfect. That is true. I mean, that's wow. Okay, so hold on. I'm gonna have to edit this because I laugh anytime I see monkeys. I can't help it. All right. All right. Okay. No, you're right, Josh. That really summed it up very well. I spoke to an old boss of mine, and he actually said the whole negotiations are like 2 monkeys fucking a football. So I think that really does sum it up well. But as far as getting back to the minor league situation, contraction. How do you guys feel about this? Dan, I'm sure you're not crazy about it because you have players in the minors. Kevin, I don't know how you feel about it. Josh, you made the cut, so that's God bless. That's great. But, I mean, do you think this is good for the game overall, or is it just the owners being cheap again, and is it them trying to pinch pennies and not dilute the talent pool? I mean, what do you guys think about this? Josh, go ahead.
Josh.
I think it's awful. I think it's awful for baseball. And it's one of those things where I was mentioning, you would think the owners would have this, long-term vision of, building baseball up as a sport, building baseball among like small communities, like most minor league teams are in small communities. A lot of kids, their first professional baseball game is a minor league game. That's how you get people involved.
Yeah.
That's how you get people interested.
Right.
And unfortunately, I think this is just them trying to, save a little bit of money. I mean, I think eventually it's going to be their way of saying, oh, we're going to pay minor league players more. I mean, and the reason we can afford to do that now is because we cut so many other minor leaguers. So I think it's just kind of, like I said, I think it's a lack of long-term vision from a lot of the owners in terms of what makes baseball great and what makes baseball significant among many smaller communities. And I think it's a shame, personally.
Absolutely. Kevin, how about you?
Yeah, I wrote about this at the time when this first came up, and not only did I write about it, I went to Daytona, Class A, Florida State League, and that was one of the teams on the list. And I spoke to the people there, the ownership, the front office, and I crushed Manfred because of that one too. I couldn't agree more with Josh. It's just horrible. It's no vision for the future of the game. He's supposed to be for the young kids. You know how many young kids start off by maybe getting an autograph from a player or seeing a player in a minor league game, and especially that level. But here's where it really gets stupid. They were gonna get rid of Daytona, right? Well, Daytona, and it's Jackie Robinson Ballpark. Jackie Robinson played his first professional game at Jackie Robinson Ballpark. And they were going to get rid of the ballpark. And this is a guy they celebrate every year. They all wear, what number do they wear? They wear 42. Well, how about this? They're going to get rid of 42 minor league teams. You couldn't have, the planning couldn't have been worse. You would think there'd be somebody in a meeting that would say, hey, commish, 42 teams, let's make it 41. or 43. You know, we're getting rid of Jackie's team already. Now we're getting rid of it's his number too. And beyond that too, I talk to people from the Appalachian League and things like that. One town had to make a decision with their tax money what to do, to renovate the ballpark or upgrade the police department, which really needed to be done. They decided to spend the money on the ballpark, and that's one of the teams that could be lost too. So from a personal, beyond the numbers, and this is why, you know, sometimes you can't get buried in numbers. You got to start looking at people and what it will do. This all goes back to the Astros and where they ran things. There's no doubt that some teams maybe have too many players or whatever, but you're feeding and you're designing the game for the future, and you do it this way with fans and young players. Also, how many of those players that don't make it, what do they do eventually? They may go back into coaching, they may teach, they may do this, they're promoting the game. You promote the game. It's so short-sighted, it's beyond reason. And that was the beginning. Well, it actually was the beginning for me, the end with this commissioner with the baseball last year when I dubbed it the Manfred Ball. So it's just one step after another where I don't think he knows what he's doing or he doesn't care about people. And this is what you get. And again, when I said earlier it was the players, I meant the players are like getting in Manfred's face and saying, don't you realize what you're doing? And also getting out there. Because imagine this. Imagine if the players said, when all this started, they came out to the public and said, you know, we know we're getting screwed. We know it. That's what owners do. All they do is screw us. But this year, it's a short year. We're gonna take one for the fans. We're gonna do this. We're gonna move forward. Everybody will love the players. Everybody. But they didn't have the common sense to step up and realize in the big picture, this is a small amount of money we're arguing over. So we're gonna fight anyway in 2021. So let's push that fight off. Let's win over the people, and there you go. So that's where we're at.
Yeah, Dan. There's the face. There's the face.
I saw
that's the face. That's the face of a player representative if I've ever seen one.
I listen. I've said this time and time again when it comes to minor league. Minor league baseball is the foundation of major leagues. Without it, you know, these are the players that go through the system in hopes to become big leaguers. It's part of the pastime. It's part of the history of the game, you know.
It's a ritual. Yeah.
And it shows to me that the higher ups don't know baseball.
Yep, that's exactly
plain and simple. You're bringing in people that don't know the game of baseball, the history of it, what it means to be a baseball player, what it means to go through have these dreams to get to that level. And all they're looking at is numbers. I do feel there's a lot of teams. I do feel there's a lot of players. I don't disagree that it should be brought down a little bit. But like Kevin said, not everybody's going to be a big leaguer. Let's look at these numbers. Not everybody makes it to the big leagues. But from that system, those players do become coaches, managers, teachers, athletic directors, you name it. They'll be scouts. There's so many positions in the game of baseball outside of being a big leaguer. And they're taking that away. They don't seem to understand the big picture of it. There's more to the game than the numbers and the dollars and cents. You know, most little kids, you know, Josh brought it up, their first game is probably minor leagues. So you go to a game and you know, I was talking to a friend of mine today about this, you know, with the Fort Myers Miracle, you know, and how he used to go there and watch Sano, Mauer, all the Twins greats that were just starting out in the GCL. Now, that's a memory that you have for the rest of your life. And as a kid, you look at that like, man, I saw this guy play through the A-ball, AA, AAA, get to the big leagues, now be in the Hall of Fame. People don't look at that. The people in the front offices don't look at that. And it's because they're not bringing in baseball people. I've been saying that since day one. I have no problem with analytics. I have no problems with the computers in the game. I have no problem with that. But that doesn't dictate the game. You know, the game itself is heart. It's the mind. It's you know, it's what you do on the field. But now everything's become so computerized in numbers that they're taking away the emotions of it. And in doing that in the bigs and doing that in the minors, that's all right. You know, well, let's take away 42 teams. No big deal. Nobody's going to get hurt. No, that's wrong. That's totally wrong.
Well,
so I do have a big problem with that. I have a big problem with that. I really do.
I'm going to offer another slightly different perspective, because for me, without analytics is one of those words that, you know, it's very polarizing, where people think, you know, at least from my perspective, there's a lot of, you know, they split into like the new school and the old school, or, you know, stereotypically old school people dislike analytics and new school people like analytics. I don't think any of these decisions boil down to analytics. I don't think for you know, these teams and players that are being cut, it's not because, you know, it's a GM saying, you know, oh, well, these guys don't have these numbers or anything like that. It's simply the fact that owners are cheap. Owners view this as a business where they can make money in the short term. It has nothing to do with whether they have a certain WAR or whether they, you know, have a certain weighted runs created plus. Like, I think that's irrelevant to these decisions. And honestly, from a player development perspective, the more players you have, the better. So I'm sure GMs want as many players as possible, because that's more potential, you know, for a guy to develop into a Albert Pujols, who was a late round draft pick, or a Mike Piazza, who was a late round draft pick.
The latest.
Yeah, he 57th round or something like that.
He
right?
was the last player taken.
He was the last pick.
He was like Mr. Irrelevant, and that was only as a favor to Tommy Lasorda, I think, because that's his godfather.
Right.
And
look what
Kevin,
he did.
Yeah, he's a Hall of Famer. And Kevin and I I commented on Kevin's article the other day, and you know, I was talking to Chris about this also, because he tweeted something about how from the Ball 9 account about how get the nerds out of the game or something like that. And I just couldn't disagree more strongly with that sentiment, because for me at least, I don't think people necessarily.
Chris tweeted that.
I
did. Yeah, no, I know. That was me. That was all me.
Sorry.
That was all me.
Sorry if that was unclear.
No.
Did I retweet that by any chance? I forget.
I don't know. You may have. But no, I mean, look. I mean, I don't mean. But I don't mean. Hold on a second. Hold on. I just want to defend myself for a second. I'm not talking about guys like Matt Blake or like the Driveline guys or things like that. I'm talking about front office guys that have no feel for the game of baseball, like GMs that they're bringing in that are just, you know, like they're great using Excel, or they won.
But those are the.
But I'm not.
Those are the GMs that win. Those are the GMs that win.
No, not really.
No, Josh, no. I'm going to disagree with you right now, Josh.
No.
You want to? I'll tell you why.
I mean, Theo won. Yes. Theo had a huge budget to work with.
Listen. Theo won, and Theo won with analytics and all that good stuff. But also, Theo had a pretty big bankroll to go along with.
Absolutely.
Yeah, both times. Both times.
If you don't have that bankroll, you're probably not going to win. And I'll give you one example is Oakland. I always talk about Oakland. Oakland, you talk about Moneyball and what they've done, and they've been advanced. They play for the season, they get to the playoffs, and they lose in the first round. They just don't win. I'm not saying I disagree with analytics, Josh. I really don't. I think it's an important part of the game. It's a tool. That's what it should be, a tool. What they're using it as only thing to make a player. And I've seen that with a lot of players, because I've had players released that should never have been released, but because their numbers don't fit that team's makeup, then they're not worthy of being a big leaguer. And they don't know that player could have been the next Tommy Glavine, next Smoltz. And that's the part that, to me, gets to me, because I played the game. I'm on this side now. And like I said, I'm not disagreeing with analytics. I think it's a very important tool to have, but that's always been a part of the game. Ted Williams talked about that for a while. I mean, that's part of art of hitting. He's talked about launch angle and all that. That's always been part of the game, but now they're making it where this is the only thing of the game. And that's wrong, because what it does is it teaches young kids only to hit in launch angle instead of learning how to hit and taking a ball opposite field, or how to do in a situation of a 2-1 count with 1 out. They don't do that anymore. That's the part of the game that's missing, and that's making the game, in my personal opinion, I've been in this game for a long time, dull. Very dull.
I'm going to show you. I don't know if you guys can see this.
Yeah.
But,
Theo Epstein.
Oh, wow.
Wait, I'll read it to you. Media relations assistant.
That's where he
Theo,
started?
when I worked for the Padres, Theo was a assistant PR guy. And I told Theo at the time, I said, you're going to be a GM by the time you're 30. And I said, and he said, what, Kevin, how can you say that? And this is one day when he was handing me a press release late after a game. And I said, because Larry Lucchino always likes to move up people. You're smart. You're going to move forward. You're going to do great. So Theo, I agree. Theo he's won 2 championships, and he's brought analytics in there. And I've always believed in analytics to a degree. They're a great tool, but it's always, I agree with that. It's always been there. Different names. Earl Weaver was a big analytical guy.
Billy Ball.
Casey Stengel was.
Yeah.
Now I know spin rate is all the rage now, but it used to be called, his fastball would carry or whatever. There's different terms. Now it's better. There's better tools now to study it. And I'll give you a perfect example. One of the things they did this year with DeGrom, with the high-speed video, they took a lot of video of him, not really to tinker with anything, but to make sure early in spring he wasn't building up too quickly. Because if he builds up too quickly, when he'll lose some gas a little bit early. So again, you can use it all. But Theo, getting back to Theo it's a great myth. Theo has himself surrounded with baseball guys. And Theo was very smart to pull from within and get baseball guys to be his right-hand man. And then he puts the thing up there with everybody thinks it's analytics. The Rays are a great example. Rays
That's
done
a great example of it, yeah.
But, and again, I don't want to use all the terms, but speaking to one of the owners last year, he knew he was going to lose what they call 2 Google guys from the front office. He goes, we'll just get 2 more Google guys. He goes, those guys are important, but, and his Jim in Boston and everything else. But he said, our key to our success is the combination of the analytics, but the developmental people we have. The Rays develop better than anyone. And to me, that's the big loss in analytics. They look at numbers, they don't project well. And I'm going to give you one small last example and I'll shut up. The guy who projected Jake DeGrom to become kind of like Jake DeGrom, he didn't think he's going to win 2 Cy Youngs, but the Mets drafted him in the 9th round. That scout was fired by the Mets and was also fired later on by another team. I talked to him recently. He's out of work, but he's thinking of starting like his own little scout. There's a way where he can go to get income. But what does that say? The guy who projected Jake DeGrom as 9th round draft pick to win, and who eventually won 2 Cy Youngs, can't get a job. The numbers are a tool, a great tool, but let's not live. It's not a Bible. Let's not live and breathe by them.
Can I respond?
I was actually going to ask you, Josh. But yeah, go ahead. I just responded.
Go ahead, Josh.
Kevin, you make a distinction between analytics and player development. It sounds like, but for me, in my career right now, so the new player development tools are results of analytics. Every team now has dozens of Rapsodos that tell you exact velocity, spin rate, spin efficiency, spin axis, exactly how much your pitch is moving, what the gyro angle is. All these tools, and now Edgertronic cameras, which are these super high-speed cameras that they show you exactly how you're releasing a curveball, exactly how you're releasing a slider. I would not be where I am today without those tools because
they're great tools. I agree.
But for me, that's the result of analytics. And these tools, not only do I think they improve careers, they make guys better. Their stuff is okay. What I was saying was basically, for me, I think analytics have played a large role in what I've done and what the pitcher I've become. And I was talking to Kevin a little bit about how, analytics and player development, Kevin seemed to make a distinction between those two. But for me, I think player development is based in analytics. And most organizations now have Rapsodos, which tell you all this information about every pitch you throw, your velocity, your spin rate, your spin efficiency, your spin angle, how much the ball moves, et cetera, et cetera. And under somebody who really understands those and really understands how to develop a pitcher with those metrics, they can be extremely valuable. It extends careers. It makes pitchers better. Look at guys like Justin Verlander, who, was washed up with the Tigers in his last few years, and goes to the Astros, who, regardless of what you think about the Astros, they have the best player development in baseball. And they've revived his career. They revived Charlie Morton's career, Garrett Cole's career, and I actually looked up because I made a comment about, the analytical teams are the teams that win. This is an ESPN ranking, so, take it with a grain of salt. But the teams that they rank as the best analytical teams in baseball: Boston Red Sox, Chicago Cubs, Cleveland Indians, Houston Astros, New York Yankees, Oakland A's, Pittsburgh Pirates, Cardinals, Rays. That's a who's who of who's been in the late postseason rounds the last few years. The Red Sox, Pirates. Cubs, Indians, and the Pirates, and but Astros, Yankees. Those are the teams that have been making World Series and winning. And the only team I can think of that's not there is the Dodgers. And then if you look at the teams that, according to ESPN, are non-believers in analytics: Marlins, Phillies, the Skeptics, Diamondbacks, Braves, Reds, Rockies, Twins, Tigers. So those are the teams that consistently are bad. I think it's pretty hard to deny at this point that analytics helps you win games. It's not necessarily. I'm not saying it's the end all be all. I'm not saying you should only have analytics guys and not have any baseball guys. But for me, I'm a huge believer in analytics. I'm a huge believer in player development, using technology and using any means necessary to help guys get better. And if I'm ever working in a front office, I'm going to be a huge believer in those as well. So I guess that finishes my rant, but I just wanted to give my perspective.
It's a very fair point, but the Nationals believe in scouts. They just won the World Series. I'm just saying you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You can have all the analytics you want. You can help guys develop, but you still need to have the scouting. And I'll give you one quick story that puts it totally in perspective. One of the national scouts won Scout of the Year award this year. And at the dinner, he said, other teams have Rapsodo, we have Juan Soto. So you can never overlook the value of true scouting and working those two together. That's what I'm saying.
I agree. And then once you scout guys and have them under your wing, you have to develop them. And that's what they call the new Moneyball, at least. I don't know if you've read the MVP machine, but the new Moneyball is player development. It's no longer getting guys who are undervalued.
No.
Yeah.
Player development is where it's at, always has been. But isn't it ironic? Because when that's what Theo promised in Boston, and to some degree he did get it, but down in Chicago, the player development never really came up. They did win a World Series. I'm not taking that away from them. But you need to really, the Yankees have more analytical guys than scouts. They have more than anyone in baseball. So they need to, they haven't won a World Series since 2003. I always say it in
2009. Hey, let's not get crazy.
No, well, I mean, here's what I meant to say. I'm sorry, I misspoke.
Give me something.
Here's what I always say to piss off Brian Cashman. The Yankees have won as many World Series as the Marlins since 2003. One. That's how I meant to phrase that. So they've won one World Series since 2003. Yep. So there is.
Thanks for reminding me.
You could say I'm just saying we just threw all that stuff out there for our analytics, but the Marlins, and they're getting more analytical now. But Jeter definitely is not a total analytical guy, so I agree with you there. But I just can't believe that people think you can just do everything with numbers and not ability, and also recognize that ability and move it up. And certainly by scouting, amateur scouting, some of the guys they're sending out now as analytical guys wouldn't know a baseball player if they fell over them. All they do is send out back reports about numbers and what he's throwing, and they don't have any projection abilities.
Exactly. Absolutely right. Look, and Josh, your points are well taken. And you're obviously a younger generation. You grew up with this, and this is what you've seen. And I'm in the middle. I've seen both sides. I really have. And I keep saying this. Analytics is important to the game. It's always been there, though, to some level. And Kevin said it right just now with scouting. It's important to have these guys out there in the field They're your field generals to go see what a player is. And once you get that talented player that you scouted and you draft, then we go to the developmental side of with the analytics. All right. He's a guy who might throw fastball, 4-seam and a 2-seam, but let's take away his 2-seam and throw a cutter because the spin rate is actually nastier with that. I have no problem with that. It's very important to have. My concern with it is that when you go to a game now, or in this case, spring training, and you see these guys, all they're doing is looking at their computers and not looking at the players and how they're performing. That's concerning to me, because when my pitcher goes and just strikes out the side 2 innings in a row, but he's not throwing 98 with incredible spin rate numbers, and you get released, that's kind of wrong. That, to me, that bothers me. And I've seen it happen.
I don't know if that happens. I don't know if that happens. At least
it does. I've seen it firsthand.
You would know better than me, but I can't imagine. At the end of the day, it's still results oriented, and when a lot of people talk about analytics, people usually apply that to Major League Baseball, saying like talking about WAR and FIP and advanced stats like that. That's what people usually, in my experience, mean by analytics, at least in terms of how the media applies it. And I think right now the fans are actually starting to get into this a little bit more. Like, look at people like Pitching Ninja on Twitter. People love the idea of, like, we see these two pitches that are in the same tunnel, and then like one tails, one cuts.
Oh, those are great. Yeah.
I think it's sad that Pitching Ninja and John Boy have done more to help the game than Rob Manfred, simply because they put out great content. I mean, it's true. Like,
you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
I don't know. This is going to be public, so I don't know what I should be saying, especially since I'm
say whatever the hell you want, man. It's fine.
But I make a distinction there, though, Josh, because you're talking a lot about high-speed video, which I mentioned earlier, which is a great thing. I'm talking about guys who just get buried in numbers. High-speed video is great because yourself, some pitchers or players are visual learners. Some learn a different way. Some can be taught a different way. But you just can't just throw numbers at guys to expect the same results. And that's why I hate it when I get thrown in the old man yelling at clouds. Because with Jack McKeon way back when, he was a math guy from way back when. And Jack would always bring the numbers in certain, but he knew what he was looking at too. He was the one who drafted Tony Gwynn in the 3rd round because Tony Gwynn was playing basketball for San Diego State. He saw Tony play in a game against the Padres. He always had a game at the beginning of the year against San Diego State. He doubled a couple times, and Jack said, who's this guy? And the scouting director said, he's a basketball player. So Jack, I think the first 2 draft picks were like Kevin McReynolds and somebody else really good. I forget who right now. And then Jack said, we're drafting Tony Gwynn, because Jack went back and looked at the numbers that he had at San Diego State. So it isn't that I'm not saying let's go back to 1890, but let's not let the numbers rule our lives.
From my experience,
we can't. I'll again, Josh, you brought this up about extending careers. Look, in the 60s and 70s, there were pitchers that lasted 20, 25 years, 19 years. So that to me, I don't know about extending careers. I'm personally, I don't know.
There's also a ton of guys that last that long, and we just forget about them.
I've seen more guys that played longer, and whether it was a financial situation or not, in the 60s and 70s and 80s than they do now. I understand a team like the Astros resurrected somebody like Morton and Verlander and those guys, because they're good at what they do with the spin rate and the analytics side of it. They really are. But I don't know if analytics is what extends a person's career. I personally don't think so. I could be wrong on this. And again, it's your opinion, my opinion. And I'm not saying it's not working or it's not good. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that we need to have and find a balance to the game of baseball, and there isn't one because of that. I think there's too many people in front offices and teams that are just focusing on the numbers and not the play of the game.
From my experience, at least, the people who focus solely on the numbers are the people who don't fully understand what analytics mean and don't fully know how to use it to make people better. And so I think we're kind of talking to the same point here. The people who, and I think, and you look at the Astros, they're pioneers with the Rapsodo. They're pioneers with these high-speed video. They're pioneers with, more than just numbers. It's not, and like, I totally agree with you. I think using just numbers is that's where you can run into issues. But the idea is it's a combination of all the tools in your tool belt that you use to develop players. It's not just, like Kevin said, it's not just throwing numbers at guys. I agree. I don't think that would work either. I think the people these departments that are truly, advanced in these, in analytics, and the departments that are frankly winning a lot, I think they know how to use it. And like I'm saying, I think we're all agreeing here. They know how to use it. They're using it as a tool, and they know how to use it as a tool better than anybody else. And that's why I think they're finding so much success compared to other teams.
Understood.
Well, and I also want to add that the Astros are pioneers in the use of other types of video as well.
Trash cans! But yeah.
I'm glad you beat me to that one.
Sorry.
You know what? Though? I will say that this is a concern I do have with when you talk about throwing the term analytics out there. It's a big concern is I believe there should be a balance. Like I said, MLB, there should be a balance, and in the minors with it. I think some teams do depend on it too much. My concern though is youth baseball, and I see it now because on an advisor standpoint, as we start advising kids in college and high school to get to, the point of getting drafted, becoming pros, you see a lot with travel ball and youth baseball where that's all they focus on. That's a concern of mine too. I think I have a bigger concern with that there than I do in the minors. So I do. I agree with you, Josh, with what you say. You're in a minor league system right now, and you've learned a lot from it. You're a bright kid, and I think you got a solid future ahead of you. And I see how you can differentiate it, and you're using it to your advantage because you're using it as a tool. You're not using it as the only thing there is. And I think that'll help you a lot in the long run. And I'd like to see more people push this as a tool rather than the end-all be-all, because what it's doing is it's bringing it down to the lower levels of little league and travel ball and things like that. And that's concerning to me. And if you heard that noise, that's a siren. That's my neighbor's a Collier County sheriff, so he's got his sirens on.
Oh, nice. Okay.
I
was hoping your dad didn't get into something weird. I was like, "Where's Mr. Tiant?"
I just
no.
want to make one last point, and I hope that Josh. It sounds like he's on a great path and where he's going. But I recently talked about, and again, this is not necessarily analytics, but it's the whole numbers craziness with young pitchers worrying about how hard they throw.
Yes.
Glavine told me he had to learn. He lost 17 games his first year in the majors. He talked to the hitters, what do I need to do? And the hitters all said the same thing. That low outside fastball is the hardest pitch to hit. And he offseason, he went to win a ball. He learned to command his pitchers. And you know what else he learned? And this to me is the fascinating part. He learned to take a few miles off. And Maddox has told me the same thing. They learned to take a few miles off, command the fastball, get it where they want, and every once in a while buck up and throw the hard fastball just to keep the guys honest. But if these kids get so involved, and I've seen it with the Mets, I've seen it with Syndergaard, I've seen it. Yeah. The numbers get to be, and again, this is not the analytics fault, but it's the result of analytics. They get so fired up about the numbers, they forget they got to pitch a little. And that's the one thing I'd love to see that combination of. There's another example for me.
That's what I was going to say.
That's a perfect example.
At the end of the day, if I throw a pitch right down the middle and it's the hardest pitch I've ever thrown and a guy hits it out of the park, I'm not going to be happy, So, but at the end of the day, in game, it's about performing. Obviously, it's always been about performing. But I think part of the player development process is, pushing yourself in these, because what you're saying about, velocity and stuff, in theory, my mechanics, which allow me to throw the hardest, should also be the most efficient mechanics that prevent me from getting hurt, and allow me to have the best command. You can actually see that. I've actually trained at the Florida Baseball Ranch. I know Driveline does similar stuff, but essentially optimizing your mechanics to allow you to throw the hardest will also, in theory, allow you to have the best command and also allow you to have, the healthiest career possible. Because
but do they also say max effort on every pitch is the way to go? I disagree with that. You can't max effort every time. You can't.
It depends on. As I'm a relief pitcher, so my opinion's probably a little different. But
no, it is absolutely.
But
you can max effort.
Justin Verlander early in his career would throw 92, 93 in the first inning, and by the ninth inning, he would throw 100 miles an hour on his 100th pitch. So I think there's some truth to what you're saying.
Well, that's true. That's kind of like what Severino was doing too before he got hurt. He would come at next thing you know, 7th, 8th inning, he's throwing 99 when he started out the game. 93, 94. So
we haven't even gotten into weightlifting. Weightlifting is some of the problems with these guys too. I've seen some of these guys work out. They've invited me down for workouts. I see them doing certain weight things, and I say, "Oh my God!" So again, there's so much, and that's the one thing I want to make clear too. That I respect what these guys do, and I always have. That's why I've had great relationships with players. What they do is not easy. To get to any level pro ball is unbelievable.
Right.
But there's so many people pulling at them now. You got to be so smart as a pitcher and a player not to let people take you in the wrong direction. And sometimes they bulk up too much, especially for pitchers, and they get themselves in trouble. So the combination of all this is it's a good thing you're so smart because you're going to have so many things to figure out.
Yeah, we can get into this a different time, but I disagree with that also. You look at Aroldis Chapman. Aroldis Chapman is probably the most jacked.
Well, I was just going to bring up Chapman. I was like, have you seen the videos of him working out this offseason?
It's obviously
he looks like a professional wrestler.
You can't be doing snatches and stuff like that. You got to be smart about it. But if you're on a weightlifting program where the person who's making it is trained in baseball and functional movements and stuff, then it can change your career personally.
Well, I've seen so many careers change because they've taken the wrong weightlifting advice.
Well, you know what I've noticed, a lot of teams are going more for the strength and conditioning coaches. I know the Yankees just got a guy, and he's like a kinesiologist. It's all about just movement and just, it's not flexible. It's more flexibility, less, look at Luke Voit. Luke Voit can lift a car over his head, I'm sure, because he's just, one of those, Midwest giant dudes. But I think we see more injuries, because of guys just training to play football when they're baseball players. It's just a different thing. And I'm agreeing with you, Josh. I do agree with you that, it's more about the flexibility. It's more about the right routine. I think it's the right routine, and to have the right guy in there is gonna it's gonna cut down on the injuries, and it's gonna prolong your career and make you a better player on top of it.
How do you think Noah Syndergaard got hurt this year?
Syndergaard I think is just gigantic, and I think he might be. He's like a tight end.
The reality of the situation is that throwing a baseball really hard puts a lot of strain on your arm.
Oh, it's not natural. Yeah, it's not a natural motion.
There's correlation to benching, deadlifting, and squatting. All are correlated with higher velocity. And yeah, obviously when you throw with a higher velocity, you might have a higher chance of getting hurt. But, some guys wouldn't even be here in the first place if they weren't throwing with that velocity. So,
that's true.
It's a trade-off for sure.
That's true. It's just, it's funny because I think back to when I was a younger guy and I grew up and I'm looking at a picture right up above my desk of Steve Balboni. Steve Balboni, Greg Lazinski, John Kruk, these guys didn't have obliques, so they never got hurt. These guys, they look like they should be playing beer league softball, and they're not, so that's what I mean. It's just, I think the more you fine tune your body, there's more to go wrong. It's like having a V12 in a Lamborghini as opposed to some 4-cylinder Honda. There's a better chance that your Lamborghini is going to go south before this little Civic does. So, but there is, like anything, it's just, there's a middle ground, and I think that's a huge part. Dan, I cut you off. You were going to say something.
No, that's right. Look, there is a middle ground. And, my background is exercise science, health, and fitness. I majored in kinesiology. I was a strength and conditioning coach at Northeastern. And I trained football, I trained ice hockey, and I trained baseball. And you have to train them differently. I was never opposed to weight training for baseball. My dad is. You know,
I know.
dad,
yeah, he told me about that.
25 years professionally, and all he did was
10 push-ups and use the iron ball. That's what he told me.
Iron ball and run for miles. Okay.
Yeah.
So he didn't understand me working out to get bigger and stronger to play the game. So I don't oppose of the lifting part of it. I don't oppose these guys getting bigger and stronger and throwing harder. Yeah. I just don't. You know, you go back to numbers, and Kevin brings it up. Everybody's focusing on numbers. And, you know, the harder you throw, then you'll be in the big leagues. Well, to me, it means squat if you're throwing 101 miles an hour and you can't find the freaking strike zone. See what I'm saying? So that's what you're seeing. They're focusing on the numbers. Let me get bigger, stronger to throw 100, 101, but yet let's not focus on accuracy and how to actually pitch a curveball the proper way, a fastball, and find the strike zone. Why do games last so long? Why do pitchers go into the fourth inning with 100 pitch count already? Find the freaking strike zone, let the hitter hit, get some outs. That's my problem. That's my problem with the game. You know, and the young guys need to understand that. It's not, let me hit 40 home runs, but let me have a 200 batting average. That's squat. That's crap. To me, that's crap. If I'm going to throw 101 miles an hour, but I got a 5 ERA, that's crap. You can't find the strike zone, that's crap. And those are things that we're overlooking. And I understand lifting weights and getting stronger, that's all great. It's great for your body and longevity. Don't get me wrong, because I'm big on that. I tell my guys, you better get out there. I got them all strength coaches. But with that being said, they also need to work on the other part of the game, how to hit, how to
Totally
pitch.
agree.
And they don't, because all they want to do is throw 101 miles an hour. So what good is it for me if I'm going to throw 99, 100, 102, but I just walk 3 guys? It means nothing to me.
Well, it depends on whether you think command or velocity is easier to teach to a person, you know? And because the reality of the situation is, if you throw 101 miles an hour and you have this and you walk everybody, and a guy's throwing 80 miles an hour and he can throw every pitch where he wants, the guy who's throwing 101 miles an hour is going to get a chance above the guy who throws 80 miles an hour 10 times out of 10, every single time. And so that's why people are, I think that's why people are focused on it, is because that's the reality of the situation, is that those are the guys that get chances. And the traditional thought process is that it's easier to teach command than it is to teach velocity. So obviously, you know, places like Driveline are kind of changing the conventional thinking about that, where, you know, it might be easier to teach velocity than we thought. It's not, you're not born throwing 90 miles an hour. It's possible to train that. And, you know,
but how many injuries are we having?
But like I was saying before, increased velocity just comes, that's part of the territory with increased velocity. So, you know, you're going to have higher stresses on the elbow. You're going to have higher stresses on the shoulder when you throw harder. And that's just a natural part of throwing harder.
It is. But again, you're focusing on throwing harder because that's what's going to get you there. And guess what? You're going to have Tommy John by the time you're a senior in high school.
But if you throwing harder can never, assuming all else is equal, assuming same command, same movement, throwing harder will always make you a better pitcher, because it's a game of timing. Hitters, the harder you throw, the less time hitters have to react. If you can throw that's what I'm saying. If you throw the exact same command, and it makes your off-speed pitches better too, because now, as I was saying, they have less time to react. Now you have, you know, now you have to decide earlier whether they think it's going to be a fastball or whether it's going to be a curveball. It makes everything better as a pitcher if you can throw harder. And
I think being a smart pitcher makes you a great pitcher, not throwing hard.
If it's else is equal, you know, that's what I'm saying. I throw 86 miles an hour, and I'm the one I'm saying this. I could, you know, like it's not even applicable to me, but it's just, you know, if someone could tell me everything else is going to be exactly the same, but you're going to throw 92, I'd be like, hell yeah, that makes me a better pitcher.
But at the same time, Josh, you're coming from down here. I mean, you're a submariner, and you're coming at 86. I mean, that looks. I mean, nobody knows what the hell's going on.
I'm not gonna, you know, I'm not trying to sound arrogant or anything, but I have really good command. Last year, I walked.
That's what matters.
At Johns Hopkins, I walked 8 batters in 77 innings, and in the pros, I walked 3 batters in 21 innings. You know,
Are you getting outs?
I am. I had a 1.2 ERA last year in the minor leagues, and the entirety of my off-season training is training to throw harder. Because I know that it could be a difference maker as I move up. Because you know, if I can keep the same command, if I can keep the same off-speed pitches, and I throw 3 miles an hour harder, that's even less time for a guy to react. That's even less time for him that he has to decide whether, oh shoot, it's going to be a fastball, or oh, it's a slider. You know, that'll make everything about my pitchability even, you know, that much better. So awesome. That's what I focus my off-season training on. I already have the command. I already have like the stuff. I just gotta, in my opinion, increase the velocity, and I think that'll help.
All right.
Well, I think you're definitely from that kind of.
We're running out of time again.
It'll be fascinating to watch develop.
Hold on 1 second. Hold on. Hey, Kevin, say that again. We're running out of time again. I don't know what the hell I just paid $200 for. So we got 10 minutes.
Yeah, did you pay for it?
I just paid for it.
No, I'm just saying it's going to be fascinating to watch Josh develop, because I think as much as we've disagreed on or certain points we argued on, I think he's the epitome of combining both analytics and being smart and also understanding the game and how to get people out, and we'll see where it goes.
Yeah. He makes a pretty mean website too, so it's not bad.
No, I agree. I agree 100% with Kevin on that one. I'm looking forward to seeing you develop through these years, Josh. I really do, because you do. You're on both sides, and the biggest part of it, you got this. That to me is
exactly.
Bigger key is that than the physical side of it right now. Baseball's very mental now, and you know, I'm looking forward to that.
Well, before we go, I figure I'm just going to go around and we'll just see if anybody has any final thoughts on the way the season is going to present itself, whether it's going to present itself, how it's going to present itself. Everybody just take a minute and we'll go around, and I'll start with Kernan and we'll go from there.
I think it's going to be very interesting to see if the players play with max effort all the time this year, because they got to be worried about families, COVID, next year being pissed off at management and ownership. So I'm more interested in the mental state of the game this year than the physical state, because we know the major leaguers are all great players, but where their heads are going to be this year.
Interesting. Josh, what do you think?
I don't have much to say except that I hope I'm playing at some point this summer.
All right, that's fair enough. If I'm not
playing, I hope I'm watching. I hope I'm at least watching the big leaguers play, but that's all I got.
All right, fair enough. Dan, we'll finish off with you.
Well, first, I really do hope Josh gets to play. I really do. I hope these kids do get to play and have some sort of a season somewhere or do something, because it's very important. As far as the major leaguers, it'll be interesting. I agree with Kevin. I want to see where their mental state is. I think they're pissed about a lot of things, and just see what kind of effort they're going to put. I think they're all proud, and they're not going to take this lightly. I think they're going to play all out, but I'm curious to see the level of play, the speed of it, and how it's going to affect them. That to me is going to be interesting to see. Other than I'm just looking forward to the season. I really am. We need baseball.
You're not kidding. Well, I want to thank all you guys. I want to thank Kevin Kernan. I want to thank Josh Hejka. I want to thank Dan Tiant for joining us today here on the Roundhouse. I want to thank the monkey, Marley, and the second monkey, the reliever monkey, which was awesome.
Reliever.
So apparently we're having a season according to them. So thank you guys, and we'll do it again sometime. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Chris.
I'll see you guys soon. Let's go.
Take care.
Bye.